everybody. How you doing today? It's another day. If you're waking up today and you're moving around, that means God has blessed you with another day. Now, you need to turn around and thank God for it and do something for Him. Don't just go about and do your own thing. You know, this is a day. So many people out shopping looking for bargains and everything and starting to get their list going. And sometimes we forget that God makes it all possible. So nothing happens without God being involved. And that's what we need to learn. And so we're going to talk about a lesson that basically describes excuses. And the title of the lesson is I Will Follow, But. We just have to wonder, how long is God going to put up with our excuses? And He must tire of them often because He's been hearing them for many years, thousands of years, in fact. In Luke 9:57 through 62, it reads, "And it came to pass that as they went in the way, a certain man said unto him, Lord, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. And Jesus said unto him, Foxes have holes, birds have their nests, but the Son of Man has not where to lay his head. And he said unto another, Follow me. But he said, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. And Jesus said unto him, Let the dead bury their dead, but go thou and preach the kingdom of God. In verse 61 it says, And another also said, Lord, I will follow thee, but let me first go bid them farewell, which are at my house at home. And Jesus said unto him, No man, having put his hand through to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. See, we notice these people were willing to follow Jesus. If. They're one of the smallest words in the language. It's tied for second smallest word in our language. If. They could do what they wanted to do first. And that's the way people are today. They'll follow Jesus if it doesn't get in their way of doing the things they want to do. So, we have no excuse for not following Jesus, and neither did these people that we just read about. But people still do that. They still make excuses, and whenever they say, well, I'll follow, but it means something is more important to them than Jesus. So Jesus said, follow me first. Seek God and His righteousness, Matthew 6:33. The top priority in our life should be serving God and Jesus and doing their will, and then fitting everything else in. And really, when you put Jesus and God first, everything else kind of falls into place, because all your relationships are going to fall under the guidelines of what is successful. Everything God has given us is successful. And we just have to learn that. All right, so all these sound like reasonable things to put off serving the Lord for. Well, some people try and reason, and believe me, anybody who's a preacher has heard all sorts of excuses, all sorts of reasons why someone didn't come to church. And you ask them, well, I had to take my dog to the vet, or had to go get my hair done. This is the only day I could do it. And you hear some crazy excuses, and I don't think there could ever be a number one excuse, because they're all basically saying the same thing. Well, church wasn't that important to me at that time. Some put it off because of the ball game, because of a holiday, or because of something else. We must learn that Jesus must be first in all things, or really, he's not at all. He's not there at all. And we must obey Jesus in order for Him to be able to bless us. And that's what a lot of people do not understand. See, there's not one single excuse that we offer for not following Him that is going to be acceptable. People come up with all sorts of excuses, and well, surely God will excuse me this one time. Surely God will excuse me this second time. Surely God will excuse me this third time. And before, you've got a pattern going, folks. And when that does that, you should not do it. Really, there, it's not even an excuse when you say, well, I was sick and I didn't want to infect anybody. Well, that's understandable. We all understand that. You're on your way to services and you have a flat tire or an accident. God understands stuff like that. Your intention was to be there on time in order to serve the Lord. And God knows that. But for a lot of people, they look for any excuse just to get out of going to services. And it could be just something as simple as, well, I have a headache. I don't feel good. Well, I can recall many people that I've met that basically they didn't feel good, but they were there. One lady was dying of cancer, but man, she was there every time the doors were open. And she was there until about 2 weeks before she passed away. And so some people make the effort, even though they're in pain. They're in pain all the time, but yet they still make it. And I mean, I've had to go up there on the pulpit on crutches, and a lot of times I just have to sit down because my legs aren't strong enough to support me sometimes. So I sit when I do my preaching and stuff like that. But still, I mean, I would rather be with the saints than anywhere else. And there's been times when family had to tell me, you're too sick or you don't need to go. I mean, so, I mean, there's reason, and God would know where our heart lies. But does God accept excuses? Well, we look at the history. No, he doesn't. You know, people in all ages have offered excuses for not obeying God. But God has never accepted one of them. I mean, Adam blamed the woman and God who gave her, and yet Adam is the one who committed the sin. So God didn't excuse him for that. You know, Moses offered excuses for not wanting to deliver Israel from Egyptian bondage. You remember what he says there in Exodus? Who am I? I mean, to go on such a mission. I mean, they will ask me who sent me, and who should I tell them? And they will not believe me. And I'm not an eloquent man or a man of words. I mean, every time these people, Moses offered an excuse, God had a response. They said, well, you can do this, you can do that, and I'll even send Aaron with you. And in 1 Samuel 15, King Saul blamed his troops and tried to twist such failure into something good, at least he thought. Well, they only did it to bring to sacrifice to the Lord. I mean, no, the people rushed upon the spoil, and so Saul blamed them for it. But guess what? He's the leader. He's the one in charge, and he was supposed to be in charge, but he didn't let that happen. So God was not happy with them, and God did not accept any one of these excuses. And so neither will he accept one when we make it today. And I'm going to go through some excuses. I mean, sometimes members of the church offer excuses for not attending worship services or doing some other duty. I mean, some will say, well, I don't like the preacher. I don't like the song leader. I don't like the elder, the deacon, or some other member. I mean, can we ask them, will you forfeit your home in heaven just because you do not like the preacher, the song leader, the elder, deacon, or some other member of the church? Well, I mean, what's their answer going to be? Well, apparently so. See, friends, this is very serious thought. Staying away from services because of some little personal differences. I mean, you're not doing God any favors when you come anyway. You got to realize that. Our purpose is to receive blessings from God and to give God glory. I mean, but you are the one that benefits from your service to God. I mean, God really doesn't benefit from your service to him. I mean, that's what he wants. He enjoys it, but he doesn't benefit from it. We're the ones who benefit when we serve him, when we fully realize what it means to be a Christian. I mean, let's face it, we should never offer any excuses. I mean, now reasons, yeah. I mean, we could do some people, yes, they have to work at certain times, and their bosses won't give them the day off or something, and they need to take care of their families and feed their mouths. So, yeah, I mean, some people give reasons. I mean, there's a difference between a reason and an excuse. And so let's just look at some of these things that I have heard personally, And I'm sure many who are preachers have heard these same things. And one thing, I stay away because people are not friendly. Well, let's see if we can answer that. Proverbs 18:24. A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there's a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. See, we must be friendly ourselves if we would have friends. I mean, if it is a terrible thing not to have friends, but Solomon says it's our own fault. And yeah, some people say, well, nobody talks to me. Well, when they jump up and leave before services are over, I mean, nobody's going to talk to you then. If they jump out as soon as the final amen is said and rushes out without saying anything to anybody, and then you're going to complain, well, people aren't friendly? Well, that's on you, whoever says that. That is on you. You're not trying to be friendly with anybody. And so, I mean, so you just imagine how they feel about you. Think about that. And so, how many times have we heard this excuse? We had company and we just couldn't go off and leave them. In Matthew 10:37, he that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. See, Jesus was not teaching us not to love our father, mother, son, daughter, but he said not to let them keep us from serving him. See, it doesn't matter who our company may be, we must not forsake God's service for them. Invite them. Say, hey, we're going to church. You want to come with us? And if not, lock up when you leave. I mean, that's all we can do. But be sure they do not cause you to disobey God. I mean, if your heart wants to be in services, they're keeping you from that. And you can't let that happen. So invite them to come with you. Who knows? You might get some seed planted that they might obey the gospel. All right. You know, some people use this. I work hard all week and I must have some time for recreation. Whether it's fishing or golfing or boating or whatever. I mean, this is a simple case of staying away for a selfish purpose. See, thinking more of our own feelings than we do serving the Lord. You know, Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the matter of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see in the day approaching. You know, some people have this idea that, well, I go out to the campsite, and if my wife is there, then we'll just have our own private service. That's not a church, folks, and that is not the assembly. I mean, that's just because you're together doesn't make it an assembly. And so some people have this all messed up. They go out, they go camping for the weekend. Well, I mean, and if there happens to be others there who are well, let's have services right here. That's not a church. So, I mean, just think about that. And then, of course, really, I was just too busy and I couldn't make it. Here's another excuse they use. Well, when we become a Christian, we must realize that it will take some time. Actually, it should take a lot of our time to be a Christian because our whole focus in life should be on serving God. And so, yeah, we shouldn't be too busy not to serve God. And so, and some people are that way. They're so meticulous in their ways that they start doing something, and before they know it, they've done 4 or 5 other things before they do that. I mean, I do it sometimes, but not when it comes to serving God. I mean, if I go in, okay, I go take my morning pills and look down, well, the dog needs to be fed, the dishes need to be washed and or put away, and this pan needs to be put into soak or whatever. I mean, you find things to do, and then you realize, now, why did I come in here? Oh, yeah, to take my pills. But anyway, sometimes we do get very busy with things that really don't matter or are not as important as they ought to be. All right, so once again, remember what Jesus said. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things are going to be taken care of. I mean, that's it. So, if we're too busy to serve the Lord, then folks, we're just too busy. You got to get some things out of your life if that's the case. And how many of us have heard there's too many hypocrites in the church? You know, I don't say it, but, you know, I felt like saying it sometimes, and sometimes I regret that I didn't say it. come on in, friend. There's always room for one more. I mean, put it that way. Come on into church. There's always room for one more hypocrite. I mean, when you look at it that way. And seriously, though, the person that stays out of the church because of hypocrites will have to spend eternity in hell with them. Think about that. The rest of eternity with them. You can't stand hypocrites in the church today. Well, then just plan on spending eternity with them. So did you ever try and hide behind something that is smaller than you are? I mean, we see this in cartoons and other things. A person hides behind a very small bush, and it's quite obvious you can see him. See, if a hypocrite stands between you and the church, well, then you must be smaller than that person. So why not look at the best members of the church and see if you can see how good they are? I mean, they're the type of people you should be trying to be like. Be like the best members of the church and not like the hypocrites. Because the best members of the church are usually trying to do God's will. Okay, some of these other excuses. Well, I don't need to obey the gospel. I'm a good moral person. I mean, they've bought into this lie that as long as you're good, you're good. I mean, well, I pay my debts. I'm a good neighbor. I don't abuse my family. I don't get drunk. Don't gamble. And I attend to my own business. Now we ask the question, does this save a person? No. There's nowhere in the scriptures. Yeah, even though those are some things that, yes, as Christians we're supposed to do, none of those provides the salvation that we need to get us into heaven. God hasn't promised to save on any of these conditions. Another excuse I've heard is the Church of Christ is too narrow-minded. I mean, after one looks into the creeds of men, he sometimes says the Church of Christ is too narrow. And sometimes they want to be broad and liberal. Well, the Church of Christ is just as broad as the Bible and as narrow as the Bible. Well, and you know, have to put a little asterisk here and say, not all churches of Christ are that way. Only those that hold to sound doctrine are that way. There's a lot of places called Church of Christ that are just as liberal, and they're no different than the denominations. In fact, they're one of the denominations. There's no question about that. But a sound church, one that preaches and sticks with the truth, is going to be as narrow as the Bible and as broad as the Bible. Nothing more, nothing less. I mean, for years, the church had the motto, speak where the Bible speaks, be silent where the Bible is silent. And that's been a motto for many, but many cannot claim that anymore. Many churches of Christ cannot do that because they've added things which the Bible doesn't talk about, or they left things out. You know, Jesus said in Matthew 7:13 and 14, enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. So we can read of the Church of Christ in the Bible and obey God's plan of salvation and be saved. I mean, so that's what we can learn. And here's another excuse, and many will use this. There's plenty of time. I don't have to do it right now. I'm still young. I have many years before me. But then maybe we'll turn around. How do you know just how many more days you have to live? I mean, all you have to do is turn on the news and read about people losing their lives, sometimes even young people losing their lives. I mean, and this is probably one of the biggest excuses people offer. I mean, it's one of them. And what it is, we can make this. Someone made the statement, procrastination is the thief of souls. And when you think about it, yeah. I've never talked to one single person that was making his plans to spend eternity in hell. No, I really haven't. You know, some people joke about it. Well, I'm going to go to hell where all my friends are going and all that. But they all joke about it. But no one says, I really plan to be there in hell for eternity. No. A lot of people say, well, I know that I'm wrong. I'm going to change my life someday. I mean, for most people, some days means none of these days. And that's usually what it turns out. All right. Maybe we need to change or get rid of these things that take our time away from God. You know, our obedience to God will bring blessings that will never end. That's what we know. Nothing will get in our way of the blessings we have. Romans chapter 8, 28 to 32. I mean, the things that we gain here will be left at the grave. So obedience to God will carry us on through the grave into heaven at last. You know, Jesus said in Matthew 7:21, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father, which is in heaven. And many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So friends, none of us knows just how long we have to live on this earth. And now as we read in 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 2, now is the accepted time to obey God. Now is the day of salvation. I mean, don't continue to offer excuses for not obeying God, because they're going to catch up with you. You don't know when the end's going to be. So we need to obey him while you can. I mean, the Lord's going to come back someday, and if we're not prepared, guess what? We're not going to be invited into heaven. But if we are prepared, then he's going to say, welcome in, good and faithful servant. So, as Peter said, this earth is going to end someday, and what sort of persons ought you to be in most holy conduct? All right, so that was 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 11. So, folks, stop making excuses. Stop accepting excuses. I mean, it's not going to do them any good when they make excuses for missing services. And really, it just comes down to they have the wrong priorities in their life. And if they want to go to heaven, they've got to establish the right priorities. So think about those things. And we're going to come back another day with another lesson, Lord willing. So you have a good day now, and do something for God. And if you have been doing so, stop making excuses. Obey God while you can. And take the time, read Lamentations chapter 3, verse 40. Lamentations 3 and verse 40, and see what it says. All right. Lord willing, be back again. Bye-bye for now.